Hey, how's it going guys? Josh Thomas here from thebitblock.com with our video review for Pilotwings Resort on the Nintendo 3DS. This is a flight simulation game and it's very similar, obviously, to the past Pilotwings games on the Super Nintendo and the Nintendo 64. And then it's also very similar to the airplane game in Wii Sports Resort on the Wii. So if you have played any of those three games, you know what's going on here. It's all about soaring above the skies of Wuhu Island, just like in the Wii game. So it's really fun. There are three different aircrafts you can pilot: the airplane, hang glider, and rocket belt. So each one of those definitely offers up its own unique take on the flight aspect, so it's really cool. And naturally, there are a lot of crazy missions to accomplish. Some of the stuff you'll be doing is flying through rings, pulling off stunts, collecting a whole bunch of items, firing at targets. Things get pretty crazy here on Wuhu Island. It is for one player. It is developed by Monster Games. They're obviously the studio that previously brought us Excite Truck and Excitebots Trick Racing on the Wii. I'm a huge fan of Excitebots, so anything Monster Games does, I'm on board. Sign me up. I'll check it out. So I think, you get the idea of what Pilotwings Resort is, but of course there's a lot more to talk about, so let's not waste any more time. Let's jump into our full, detailed video review on Pilotwings Resort. Pilotwings Resort is all about your Mii character flying through the sky above Wuhu Island and completing missions. There's a total of 3 different aircrafts to pilot: the plane, rocket belt, and hang glider. Each one offers up a different style of gameplay. So obviously the plane is essentially your average basic aircraft in the game. You control simply by using the circle pad to navigate, press the A button to perform a boost, B button to brake, and use the L and R shoulder buttons to take sharp turns to perform barrel rolls. That's right, barrel rolls. The rocket belt is essentially like a jetpack. Use the circle pad to adjust the directions of your rockets and press the A button to blast off in that direction. You do have a limited amount of fuel though, so it is kind of important to keep an eye on the fuel gauge. Finally, the hang glider is a more relaxed, laid-back aircraft. Again, the circle pad is used for navigation, and really, that's all you need to know in terms of controls. Of course, it can be pretty tricky because there's no engine to propel you forward, and you do have to keep your momentum flowing, so instead the island will feature little wind tunnel locations that you need to soar through in order to stay off the ground. The game's mission flight mode is set up in classes, so we've got bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and diamond. Obviously they ramp up in difficulty as you progress down the line. In total, there are 36 different missions to complete, and overall the game has a pretty good amount of variety. So let's go over a few of the missions to kind of give you a better idea in terms of what the game has to offer. For starters, we have somewhat basic concepts like fly through rings and shoot at targets that appear, traditional Pilotwings style gameplay. But even the more standard ideas can still be a lot of fun. The game also tosses in lots of additional content like speed panels that can only be broken for points if you're going fast enough, question mark panels that activate falling pills, and floating mines that can make maneuvering a little bit tricky. But there's also more wackier missions as well. So this one, for example, has you collecting little baby UFOs and returning them to their mothership. You have to do that in the quickest time possible. Here's another fun one where you bump into balloons and you want to try to get them into the target zone so that the crates can be delivered onto a ship. And this mission here has you putting out fires on Sugar Sand Beach, and if you run out of water, you gotta dive back into the ocean real quick to fill back up. So in addition to the beloved Pilotwings gameplay, they've added in some more cartoony ideas, which, I think was a very nice touch. My only issue though is a good amount of these games' missions seem like maybe they didn't reach their full potential. The UFO mission, for example, I feel like they could have stretched that concept out and created some variations on the idea to give the player more content. Maybe the little UFOs are trapped inside of the island's tunnels, or maybe you have to collect them in a certain order. I think there's a lot of cool ideas here, but they're sort of short-lived inside of that one mission. If you're tired of being told what to do in the mission mode, you can always fly over to the free flight mode, which is basically just like Wii Sports Resort. Here you can work on charting all of the island's locations and popping all the balloons scattered throughout the island. A new addition, however, is that depending on what aircraft you're using, you can also collect bonus items. If you're using, for example, the plane, you can collect stunt rings by performing the stunt that appears on the ring. The rocket belt has you searching for Mii trophies, and finally, the hang glider just has you flying through gold rings. Definitely, the least interesting of the 3 bonus items. The bottom screen during gameplay is basically used as a map. This is something we've seen a lot in DS games, but it is kind of useful because it shows where all of the items of key interest are on the island. Pilotwings Resort is a very nice looking 3DS game. Wuhu Island looks basically identical to how it does on the Wii. However, because this is a small screen, it really doesn't give off as much atmosphere or clarity as playing on a huge TV screen. It's also worth pointing out that unlike on the Wii, Pilotwings Resort doesn't feature any Miis casually standing around on the island. There's also a lot less balloons to pop, but other than those 2 things, Wuhu Island has basically been successfully ported over to Nintendo's handheld without anything seeming too gimped. It really does feel like Wuhu Island in the palm of your hands, which is very cool. The game's engine does have a lot of nice effects, like bump mapping on rocks and water that reacts to lighting, so if you're in a cave, the water looks really cool. Flying around in the evening with the sun glaring over the island is very pretty, and at night, the fireworks give off a really cool 3D effect. Which brings us to the 3D itself. It's kind of interesting because at first I found the 3D effects in the game to be kind of distracting, and it seemed like judging distance between objects was actually difficult to understand, which is not good considering 3D is supposed to do the exact opposite of that. However, in time I started to adjust the 3D slider a bit and found that because the 3D felt so intense in Pilotwings Resort, it's best to have it about halfway down for me. Once I altered the depth and, kind of messed around with the slider, the game became much easier to grasp. So one of my issues with handheld gaming in general is that when you play a game in a big open world, it tends to feel a bit stuffy, like you're not really able to grasp the atmosphere of the environment due to how, small the screen is. However, with the 3DS, I'm finding the 3D kind of breaks down that barrier. You feel as though you're able to look into the world like never before, and Pilotwings Resort is a very nice example of that. Playing a game on a handheld in 3D, trust me, feels so much more open than playing in 2D. It's like somebody, opened up a window and the game feels breezy. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's the best analogy I can come up with. One of the best features in Pilotwings Resort is the soundtrack. They really nailed the music, and it sounds like it would fit right in with the Super Nintendo and N64 games. So naturally, we've got some faster, more upbeat tunes for piloting the plane or rocket belt. And because soaring through the skies can also be a very soothing activity, the game has some slower, more relaxing music. The soundtrack really does go a long way when it comes to adding atmosphere in the game. There really isn't a huge amount of music, but the tracks that are here are basically musical gold, in my opinion. Even the little sound effects for clicking through the menu options sound very similar to the N64 game. This really is exactly what you would want a Pilotwings game to sound like. Pilotwings Resort is one of those games that you would replay again and again to try for better scores. So each mission gives you the chance to earn up to 3 stars, and the game does require that you have a certain number of stars to move into the next class. There are a lot of different ways to improve your mission scores, such as a better time, better landing, collecting more and more bonuses, and so on. It's definitely the type of game that you can get better at as you play more. Like I mentioned earlier, Free Flight mode has a lot of items for you to collect, and so just casually flying around and trying to pop all of the balloons, charting all the locations, and gathering all the bonus items is certainly something that's going to add in some replay value. You can even work towards unlocking cool little 3D dioramas by finding all the bonus items in Free Flight mode. Also, by popping balloons, you'll unlock a longer time limit in the Free Flight mode. Most of the hang glider missions give you the opportunity to take some photos of the island and then save them to your SD card. Sadly though, they limit you to how many photos you can take, and it's only about 3 each flight, so it's cool, but it just seems a little bit too limiting. Also worth pointing out is that the photos are pretty small and kind of a crummier quality, but nevertheless, it's still a nice feature. Sadly, the game does not feature any multiplayer support, which to me is a huge bummer because, I mean, imagine how fun it would be buzzing around the island with a friend locally or on Wi-Fi, and you both have the rocket belt strapped to you. That would have been insanely fun. And there's really no way to share your high scores with friends aside from like handing them your system. So having a way to share high scores with people on your friends list would have been really cool. It seems like this game would have been perfect for challenging friends to beat your score over Wi-Fi, but sadly, there's no multiplayer support or anything like it. But between the 36 missions, earning 3 stars, and collecting all the unlockables, Pilotwings Resort should keep you very happy for a decent amount of time. Pilotwings on the Nintendo 64 was kind of a landmark in video gaming for me personally. It was the first time I recall getting a true sense of atmosphere in a video game. Flying around a 3D town during the sunset was really new and exciting back in the day. I remember thinking, wow, how can a game look better than this? Now Pilotwings Resort has come along and it sort of recaptures that feeling. Soaring above Wuhu Island and enjoying beautiful 3D without glasses is definitely a new experience. However, I do get the feeling that this game isn't fully cooked, so to speak. There are true signs of creativity and fun ideas, but it seems like they're short-lived, and if Monster Games was given more time, they could have turned out a much more impressive game overall. Pilotwings on the Nintendo 64 had a larger variety when it came to missions and vehicles. I really wish we had more wacky variations on aircrafts, and more missions, and, just an overall better layout for missions so we got more out of every gameplay concept. Personally, I really love Wuhu Island. I have a huge passion for anything summer, so I'm not too disappointed that it's the only island in the game, especially considering it's much larger and more detailed than locations in the old games. I still love casually flying around and thinking, hey, that's where I've jogged in Wii Fit, and hey, that's where we play table tennis in Wii Sports Resort. Besides, you can also fly out to Wedge Island, so if you want to get technical, the game does have 2 areas to check out. Longtime Pilotwings fans may be disappointed that a few modes from past games are missing, and the game doesn't bring back the old classic characters. However, since you play as your Mii, you could always just make Miis of the old Pilotwings gang and use them. In conclusion, I really like Pilotwings Resort. It's a fun launch game for the 3DS, but it really doesn't seem all that fresh or surprising. Also, I still think it's more fun to fly around Wuhu Island on a large TV screen on your Wii with motion controls, but nevertheless, it still provides an enjoyable experience on your 3DS. There's a decent amount of fun content, it looks great, it sounds great, and it's certainly one of the better launch titles for the system.